Welcome to the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting of the 12th of December. Who can believe it? Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa. Haumia hui tāki. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Apologies this morning. We have one from Councillor Morrison and one from Councillor Roy. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McPhail. Seconded, please. Councillor Cook. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Declarations of interest.
Yes, Madam Chair. The presentation from the Waiau Fisheries and Wildlife Habitat Enhancement Trust. I was involved in the development of this trust way back in the 1990s, and one was, if I could say rather immodestly, one of the key players in getting it set up.
Its longevity is proved. So
wonderful organisation. So I do declare interest in that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Great. Just on that, the delegation from the Waiau Trust will be in at 10. So we'll have to take them slightly out of order. They will not be next. They'll be in at 10 o'clock. So hopefully that will just slot straight in after one of our items. Right, that takes us to the confirmation of minutes of the 16th of October, is it? Feels like a long time ago. Yeah. Any you want to move those, please?
I'll move that.
Thanks, Councillor Rodway. Seconded. Chairman Horrell. Any changes, errors? Great, I'll put those in. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Carried. Thank you. And then we are on the adoption of resolutions from the Climate Change Subcommittee of the 6th of November.
Yes, Madam Chair. The two main items at this meeting, which are reported here, was our second greenhouse gas emissions annual report, which showed that our emissions were a little bit less than the first round. So that's the second time it's been done to assess how much greenhouse gas we emit in our operations, there is work going on as a result of that Amy is involved with to look at ways that we can reduce our emissions. So that will come through hopefully early next year, and we can look at ways of reducing our emissions. There was a presentation by the National Public Health Service about the impacts of climate change on people, which was very interesting and useful. And that's something that we'll take on board use in the future. So those are the main items, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions of Councillor Robbie? Correct. Are you moving those? Thank you. Seconded, please. Thank you, Chairman Harold. Please say aye. Yes.
I just had a thought.
Yes.
If I may.
I'm not sure.
Well, if I may express that thought.
It depends on what it is.
Just thinking about Councillor Rodway's report, climate change situation. The climate change news as it comes through it's up to date because it's news, but we don't hear it as a council. We may hear it as individuals, but as a council, we don't. For example, today's news is that the recent record taking in the Arctic shows that it's heating at 4 times the rate of the rest of the world. This is quite significant, but we don't hear these things. Do you think there's any portal that we might, aside from emailing each other, and some people don't read other people's emails, how could we keep up to date with it as a council? Because I think it's important that as governance decision makers, we're on the same page, or we know what's going on, and it clearly isn't the case.
I wonder, and I'm looking at Karen particularly, if there's because I'm conscious that we need to be sure about the science that we're sharing. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility of working through a climate report through the subcommittee. Well, I don't know, but then it's still not going to be timely. But Karen,
I don't really mean a report. I mean, well,
yeah,
we're intelligent people.
Yes.
Can we share such things?
But
Is there
we
an
all
opportunity
listen
to
to-
have a little
that might be something for the council to decide rather than the SNP, but I don't mind making a decision here. It just depends. Councillor Gibson.
Through you, Madam Chair, we all listen to the radio. We know what's going on.
No, clearly we don't, because there's such.
But hang on.
Excuse
Well,
me.
and the
Excuse
radio.
me,
listeners to that,
gentlemen.
we all listen to the radio.
Excuse me.
Point and
We know
Through
what's
me,
going
through
on.
me, please. Thank
And we
you.
also know that there's an independent commission looking at the science behind the greenhouse gases
Can
at the
we,
moment.
yeah, can we make that an action and maybe I'll talk to Karen and Rachel about the best avenue for, you know,
Yeah, if you'd look into that, that would be
Yeah,
great.
I think-
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I do know that we have put some things in the climate change subcommittee agendas previously, but the frequency of that is.
Yeah.
it could be as simple as something that, you know, Karen's had a glance over and thinks it can go on the weekly update or something, I don't know. It's worth considering, but I don't know the answer yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that takes us to notification of extraordinary urgent business. There is none as far as I'm aware, and I guess we've had a question, even though the preferred channel is notification 24 hours notice. Chairman and councillors' reports. We've got a couple there from Councillor Rodway. Again, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, this workshop was some time ago now, and I'm not sure if I've reported on it before to some other meeting, but anyway, this model, which has been used on the Winton stream, is it's quite brilliant, really. Now that we have our LiDAR levels down to 1 metre in many places, and so you can say, well, I want to put a wetland here. You know, what will its effect be? And basically, it tells you how much nutrient is took out of the water's flowing in, how much sediment. I'm not sure exactly how precise it is, but it's a very, in terms of deciding where a wetland could go, you know, it's a really useful tool. And it's only been developed for the Winton stream channel at the moment, but it is something that could be expanded out to over the whole region, and it would be really useful for helping landowners decide whereabouts they could put their wetlands and what effect that would have on runoff from their properties.
Thanks, councillor. Any
It's
questions?
just another example of what Thriving Southland is doing. Really good stuff.
Great. Question, councillor?
Yeah, thanks. Chair, yeah, I was also there at that presentation, and I have to say it was quite an impressive call at this organisation. Can you remember Morris? They're from North Island Science Group, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the value in it is ground truthing all the work in the catchment and the stacked up actions of the properties that make up the catchment. Then when you see that, you can see how it can be used for due diligence on property acquisitions and sales. It's just building up a huge body of work in behind and underneath that land. It's quite, I was quite taken by the potential of it. So yeah, quite impressed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The story maps.
If people look, you can click on it, that link there.
Yeah.
You see how it works.
Great, thank you. And please come to the table. You're most welcome, of course. Thanks for that, councillor. Any other verbal reports that are relevant? No. Right, that takes us, excuse me, to item 10.1, which is the land use change to forestry paper, which the council has requested. Thank you. Take it away.
Chair. So this piece of work was a small analysis to look at the what information we have on the change in land use with regard to commercial forestry in the region. I guess one of the first things we kind of ran into is that the data that's available for this analysis is there is lots of good data, but to use it in the way that we need to look at a regional scale to be able to understand the net changes in forestry is a little bit challenging. MPI have some good information around this, and also we get information from the notification of plantation through the NPS, plantation forestry. But to look at the net changes, still the best available information is actually our land use map, which the limitations on that is that it is very much at a regional scale and looks at and incorporates lots of different sources of land use information, combines that together and allows us to look at changes from one year to the next at that sort of a regional scale. So I guess probably what some of you might recognise is that using that data, some of the changes you might see there, perhaps you would think are less than you would expect. But it's important to remember that that's because this is looking at net changes at a regional or FNU scale. We then implemented those changes through the available water quality models that we have to answer that question that was posed around, well, this change in forest area, what impact might that be having on water quality? Has it had any improvement over the last 5 to 7 years? In general, in most cases, the net changes in forests are such that the changes to water quality at our downstream sites would be negligible. Some where we did see a very small and probably still within the era of the models changes in the Waituna, where you've got a smaller catchment and smaller changes in land use can cause comparatively larger changes in water quality in the catchment. But even there, the models were predicting a 1% change in water quality in terms of nitrogen load and concentrations. So I guess the overarching message from this paper was that we would not expect to have seen significant changes in water quality due to forest conversion in the last 5 to 7 years. Another learning is that our data and our ability to understand that at a regional net change is somewhat limited, and we could do some more work on that, I think, to improve our understanding and to sort of redo this analysis in the future. That's probably a bit of a summary. Happy to take questions.
I've got 4 lots of questions for you.
Thought you might.
Councillor Pemberton first. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thanks for that, and I think you spoke correctly on the matter that it's about water quality we're after. We're not here to decide on land use change and how that works. My question is around obviously just observations going around places like fortification and seeing where the water and land plan has landed with buffer zones for pastoral farming and cropping. Do we have the same protection of waterways around requirements from forestry around buffer zones and how they harvest? Just doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency in how different operations are happening, and there is a concern in the community around exposure against waterways when the blocks are harvested. So just a question around, do we have some good structure there to protect the water through the harvesting processes?
Yeah, so my understanding there'll be another paper coming up which discusses a bit more of the policy and settings around the forestry changes. I don't want to get too much into the policy side of things. It's not my, but there is what's within the NPS, which is maybe some people think a bit limited, but probably better to pose that question to one of the policy team who would have a better understanding of those intricacies.
Through you, Chair, as Ewan has indicated, we have got a follow-up paper coming in the new year, but we do have members of the policy team down the back. I don't know, Liz or Marcus, if there was anything you wanted to say at this stage, or we'll cover it on our item.
Cover it later? Yeah. Thanks. Is that okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald?
Very good. Great to get some great data. It's a good start. If you didn't read this and just listen to what people say, they use words like an Armageddon of pine trees. The communities are being destroyed. This is not indicating that. It's a long way from it. And so it's good to have that net. You talk about that net increases where they are. So in regards to water yield, I was told here in this council that a catchment has to get around to that 25% of planted area before there's any material changes can be seen in water yield release. That was, I do remember that. I can't remember who was sitting there. So that tells me we are a long way off that. And when you talk about changes of water quality, we need to be a bit more clear about that. That's beneficial the more you put in the catchment and trees. So I'm just looking at these at the bottom, the estimated 8.6 increase in commercial forestry area in the Waituna FMU is predicted to have a small effect. Probably should say a small positive effect.
Yeah, so that was a modelled reduction in non-administrations, yeah.
People I talk to in my community say it's the other way around, that it's a disaster on our key contaminants. I try and say that it's not, it's the other way around, but they don't hear it. So maybe there was some good work done in this council in the 90s, early 1990s, when most of the plantings were going in, and it covered off all the key contaminants plus sediment, which is a really good one around harvesting and planting, because those 5 years on either at the end of your rotation is the high risk times, aren't they? And the 20 years in between is quite benign. We should actually go back and revisit that. I think so. It's a good start. Good to get some great information around it. What I'd like to know too, I know I'm going on, because I'm quite passionate about this, is
Indeed.
through our policy team, is there any carbon only permanent category forests being planted in the last 5 years in this region? Can you get that information?
Yeah, okay. Just to go back to your previous
Yeah,
point.
it's a bit wee bit on the answer about
Around quality. So I guess it's really important to remember that this, for one, was looking at nitrogen only. And also, we are talking about FMU and regional scale water quality assessment. So this absolutely doesn't look at the localised effects, which would be associated with that harvest cycle, different contaminants. So there's a really big piece of the picture that's missing from this style of work around, those temporal changes and effects of forests on water quality. As for the carbon only question, not that I've seen in the data that I was looking at. That probably maybe one of the policy team might.
Yeah, that could be quite useful to have that information if we can find that through plantings that have gone on for the last 5 years. Because if people once again make large assumptions about planting walkaway forests in Southland.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything in the data that indicates, whether we have to indicate what the long-term use of that planting is, but it might be something we can look into.
It might be just something to keep an eye on in the meantime.
Very good.
Thank you. Chairman Horrell, you're next.
Yes, Madam Chair, interesting report, but I think, it's only 7 years, and the other thing I think we've got to be mindful of, we're measuring at the bottom of the catchments and the estuaries and the lagoons, and I suspect we've got a legacy build up there as well. Most of the other catchments aren't significant, but you look at the YL, 27.7%, that is significant, and I still think on a sub-catchment basis, over time, that low intensity, that must make a difference to our losses. And probably 7 years is not enough for some of the places where they've put in ditches and tracking, and I've seen sediment getting to water or getting close to water, I think we need to keep monitoring this as the trees become more mature. We've got a better idea, but you're only at the stage now where they'll be starting to capture a bit of nutrient and sediment loss going down as they get higher. I think it'll increase, but the fact that we are looking at the worst possible scenario for nutrient improvement because it's right at the bottom of the catchment, and so that's where all the nutrients drop and sediment drop out. So I think we need to keep monitoring this, but I suspect the effects will be more positive over time than we're seeing right now.
Thanks, Jim. Councillor Guyton, and then Councillor McPhail, and then Councillor Hicks.
Thank you for the report. I appreciate that it's quite specific, and I've got 3 quick questions that are a bit scattergun, but hopefully connected. The first is, are you aware of the government's discussions around planting for dock land, for non-critical dock land being discussed at the moment, and whether that's part of your group is factoring that in potentially? I'm not sure. Don't really need an answer, but because by the look of your face, you're not.
Is it being factored in specifically?
Okay. The next thing is, again, it would be a modelling thing, but your work is based on standard practice with plantation forestry, which is appalling in my view. Is there any way that you could look at looking at large forests managed differently, that is, casing or significant, or taking out individual, different ways of managing them, including leaving them alone, including adding a whole lot of other species in there to fireproof it, and so on and so on. Is there any work being done about that?
This work again has considered nitrogen only, and does it in a fairly simplistic way.
Yeah.
It takes an estimated nitrogen loss per hectare from a forest, which is based on literature studies that have been done in the past, and those numbers are quite low for nitrogen loss.
Mm.
There is more work suggesting that the numbers could be, at a wider range, and of course that would depend on the harvest cycle too, so you could get into that detail. There is very limited information on different styles of plantation management.
And one last quick thing: why is it that plantation Pinus radiata isn't subject, because it's a monoculture? Why aren't beetles racing through it and destroying forests like they have overseas, or any kind of organism? Is there such a threat to plantation forestry?
I don't know much about that topic off the top of my head. Other than that, I'm sure there are quite extensive management regimes that those forests go through to avoid that type of.
Doesn't look like it, but you've probably.
So you'd have to ask a forestry expert.
All right, thank you very much.
There is one. Oysters, it's called.
Thank you, Councillor.
Talk to you
Councillor
later.
McPhail.
Good to see these numbers, but it probably goes against, and I'm not disagreeing, I'm saying that, but to Peter's thing, all these trees are coming in, and it's obviously widespread, obviously the whiteout. It's got there's a bit going on down there, but we're getting told there's 500,000 less stock units in south, and the question is well, it's obviously not going into trees, or some of it's going into trees. I'm wondering what that land's going into. So I was having a look at the numbers, even in beef and lamb, the last 5 years, which is through this period. They said there's been over 200,000 hectares gone into forestry. It's obviously not in south, and there's a couple, when we're looking at whiteout. So it's obviously not doing, probably agreeing with Peter that there are some big blocks, but in the context of south, and it's not going crazy by any means going into forestry. Even in the Mataura, there's very little variance there.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at the absolute plantation notification numbers, so that's when they get notified of these many hectares have been planted in new forest. I mean, the numbers are larger than what those net numbers are. So there are, the numbers are larger. It's just that that's obviously being offset somewhere by perhaps some forest has been harvested and then not replanted, or and you're looking at the regional scale numbers, so we're not really able to pick up that detail.
Do you think or what is that land? I would have thought it's going back. There's not much getting cleared and going back into pasture. So it would generally have been replanted. I'm just working on it. I'm actually just trying to work out where the 500,000 stock units are about and what the land is doing now. The stock numbers, they do record their stock numbers. There should be
I think that would require a wider, more detailed analysis, because we could, rather than for stock, for example, we could pull this, like you say, there's other data information which we could pull and try and figure that out at a bit of high resolution, a bit more detail. I think you'd need to do that work to understand that properly.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson and then Councillor Rodway.
I guess you're waiting for this, Ewan, but I don't, and I'll agree with Councillor Hurrell. I'm not happy with the way you've measured the water, because several influences are going right down to the things, and you're well aware of that. The loss of stock units are probably not in our FMUs. There's running down towards Waka. There's large areas of tracts of forestry gone in there. But the main point I would like you to try to answer, are you taking into account here the recent plantings? I'm saying 3 to 5 years. Is that all in the here? Because that seems to be, when you're out and about, you see land that's just nuked and planted, and especially towards Kaiwera and down that way.
In theory, yes. Yeah, is the level that our land use map is able to pick up. And I will admit that is, like I was just saying, some of the notification hectares are larger than what these numbers are picking up, but that's because, again, this is looking at the net change at a regional scale. I think there are definitely improvements that could be done to our land use map information, but unfortunately we have to rely on that to perform this kind of analysis looking at water quality. If we were just wanting to look at the number of hectares in a smaller area or a smaller catchment, we might be able to get some more detailed numbers from that using, for example, the MPI data, the MPS notifications data, but we then couldn't use that to understand changes in water quality. So that's kind of our hamstring here.
I'll put a big question mark over your water quality and just carry on, but it's a good start.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Rodway.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just trying to get my head around the reason why the Waiau was a large change, but very little effect compared to the Waituna. It is explained in that paragraph bottom on page 105, but can you go into a bit more detail?
It's really just the scale of the Waiau versus, and really the size. So whilst there's a 27% increase in forestry within the Waiau, that's still a very small proportion of the Waiau catchment as a whole. So the impact that has on water quality at a FMU scale at the bottom of the catchment is still negligible.
Including the whole of...
That is including all of the catchment of the Manapouri and Te Anau lakes. So that side. So yes, while the percentage change in forestry seems quite large, that's part to do with because of the size of the forest area to start with. Overall, it's not. It's still, the forest makes, commercial forestry still makes up a very small percentage of the catchment area overall.
Right. So the 27% just relates to land use change.
Yes, it's not saying that 27% of the land in the Waiau is used for commercial forestry. There has been a 27% increase in commercial forestry within the Waiau.
So you're familiar with the Taupo experiment where they changed land use from pastoral land to forestry there, and I think I understand that was quite successful in reducing the amount of nitrogen that was discharged to Lake Taupo. I know there are huge subsidies and things, but if we we were to do a similar sort of thing in Southland to get nitrate down to a low level, using forestry as a tool to do that, would that be possible to work out how much we would need, how much forestry we would need in each catchment to do that?
Yes, it would be possible to do that. So in a relatively simplistic basis, so just looking at forestry for this modelling, we understand that the nitrogen losses are less than 5 kilograms of N per hectare on average, compared to, for example, dry stock, which is more in that sort of 16 to 25 range, in sort of other numbers. So yes, we could do some work to try and understand that. Simply changing enough land and reducing those losses from 16 to 30, or above for dairy, down to less than 5. Of course, if you change enough land, will have an impact. And you could look at the scenario to understand how much land you would need to change in order to have a significant impact on water quality in terms of nitrogen.
Is that something that we're considering doing, or at this stage? Is that too much to ask for?
I don't know.
Potentially some of the work that we would look to do to inform the pre-2027 plan change. Karen, have you got any comment on that? Is that something you feel we could add into the work program?
Yeah, we'll take it away and see what we can do.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald and Councillor Phelan and Chairman Harold.
Madam Chair, for sneaking me in, I'll be very brief.
You're lucky you've
Just-
got company. Better be a question though.
Just regarding Morris's comment about incentivising, I don't think that's necessary when we're talking about a land use change that is highly profitable, double-digit return on capital employed, and its alternative, sheep farming, for example, a long way off that. So the prize is there, the profitability is there, it's just people do not really like planting trees. So I don't know an answer to that, but I don't think we have to incentivise something that is already highly attractive in a profitability sense. But I understand what you're talking about.
Thank you for your non-question.
If I could just, I do
Yes,
think
you
it would be a useful exercise, just like they did at Taupo to work out what the difference would be. I have seen models in the Hawke's Bay which suggest that a very large proportion of the land would have to be put into forestry too. So I don't know if it would be too scary to do for everybody, or whether it would really just be an exercise, a futile exercise, because it's something that would never come to fruition. So I don't want us to be going down that rabbit hole, but I still think it would be interesting for us to consider, just without doing a massive.
There might be something can be done, and certainly I was going to say at the end, which I thought was now but isn't, that if this is a baseline kind of bit of information for us, there's opportunity for us to track changes. Councillor Pemberton and then Chairman Horrell,
Thank you.
and then that will be it.
Yeah, I guess you and I, with the request to see how much forestry, I guess, is a question, is it forestry or is it best mitigation? What is the best result? We know our most productive land is our most leachiest, but we know Southland requires that land to operate how it does. So would wetlands be a better fit? And it's, working out bang for buck and effect, I suppose, is, it would be interesting to see whether forestry lands of that large scale and what other fallouts we have. But wetlands seems to be something that might be a slightly better fit to those scenarios. But anyhow, I'd be interested to run the two side by side.
Yeah, so we do have in the updated package of work, which I understand will be, not sure exactly when you've been out. So we've done some rerunning of the scenario modelling that was that some of which was done for the regional forum. So some of that, plus also some additional scenario modelling, and that work is has been done. And there is some information in there around wetland scenarios. So looking at what the effect of implementing wetlands would be. There is also in there some work on forestry. So we looked at identifying areas within Southland that we expected would be likely to be converted to forestry under a specific carbon price. And that gives us an identified area of kind of that fringe areas of land, and we had run that through the model as well to understand, well, if they were all converted to forestry, what impact would that have on nitrogen and phosphorus, or nitrogen only actually. And that's accompanied by various other scenarios looking at, saying, wetlands and different changes in losses from sheep and beef and dairy, so different percentage reductions. So that is all within that package of work, which should be available. I'm not sure when, but it's almost ready to go.
We'll see that.
Yeah.
And finally, Chairman Horrell.
Very briefly, Madam Chair, but Morris reminded me, talking about the Taupo situation, that they weren't getting the loss reductions they expected. They actually found that legumes, namely gorse and broom, were contributing significantly at Holden, gorse up to 35 kgs a hectare. So I think we need to keep doing this stuff, because initially in planting, we do get an infestation of legumes. Over time, that forest will get up and suppress them. But so I think this is a study we need to actually keep tracking. I think it's useful baseline, and just see where it goes.
Hot topic, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes. Therefore, we've spent some time on it, which is good, and I guess it's
You
given
have
the
to
team,
move the recommendation.
some directional manoeuvrings, maybe. Thanks, Chairman. Chairman Horrell's moved it.
Rebecca might want to say
Yeah.
something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's fine. Thanks, Rebecca. Seconder, please. Thanks, Councillor Pemberton. Thanks, Ewan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Please make sure you do vote, otherwise we, audibly or visibly, so that we don't slip something by you by mistake. Right, 10.2, the government policy legislation monitor. Again, many pages. Thanks, Charlotte. Take it away.
It's a pleasure to bring you the latest version of the policy monitor to you today that seeks to provide a comprehensive coverage of the current and upcoming national policy changes. As highlighted earlier, in the past, the additional changes have been marked in red for the ease of reference. I hope you found the time to go through the monitor itself. And the key changes, several key changes have happened since the last SN committee meeting. They include the enactment of the Resource Management Amendment Bill number 1, and the progress of the fast track approvals bill through the parliamentary process, as well as release of some significant bills, including the treaty principles of the Treaty of Waitangi and the regulatory standard. More details have been covered in the monitor, but I would also like to draw your attention to the several pieces that have been released this week, which didn't make their way into the monitor. That includes the Resource Management Amendment Bill number 2. A bill is out, and we expect to be informed about the consultation closing date shortly. And the number 2 bill of the Local Water Done Well package has landed this week, and we will be staff will be doing analysis to understand the various implications arising out of the bill. And also the second emissions reduction plan has been released by the government this morning. So we'll be coming back to you with more details on that. And lastly, there have been some announcements from the government regarding the changes to the ETS settings, trying to limit the conversion of farmland into forest, which is really relevant to the discussions that have been happening this morning. And there will be a workshop following this committee meeting, and during which we will have an opportunity to discuss some of the topics in more detail.
Thanks, Sean. Did you want to say anything else?
No.
Questions, councillor McDonald?
Yeah, just on that last point about the government announcements around the emissions trading scheme or the entry into it last week, they're pretty high profile. Does that bring up issues around land use class classifications? And are we going to have any involvement in those discussions? Because there is an awful lot of discrepancy around those classes. And my understanding is the government are preparing a way that we can have, landowners can have recourse around land use classes, because there always has been discussion back and forward about what class sits where. So is that a discussion that this council, or is this for the district council to be involved in? Because there's going to be an awful lot of toing and froing and questions from landowners and debating the fact. So I was just wondering if it's going to be more work for us or about the same.
Through you, Madam Chair, the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land already exists, and there is a requirement in that policy statement that the regional councils need to remap land classes. So at the moment, there's a Manaaki Whenua layer on Southland that identifies all the class land from 1 through to 7 or 8. So 1 being the super highly productive land. Generally, the Southland Plains are in the 2 and 3 category around the productivity. And then I had a quick look after the announcements last week, and generally the class 6 land is higher altitude. So a lot of the Umbrella Garvey mountain ranges, Snowdon, Takitimus, around Te Anau, Longwoods, Hokanuis, and Patmans are generally the areas where that class 6 land sits. So I guess there's some benefits in terms of the announcements around maintaining productive land class or productive soils for sheep and beef and other horticultural processes. But that class 6 land is generally the land that we've had problems with wilding pines and biosecurity issues and biodiversity issues as well. So there is going to be a look at that process through the challenging part, or the ability for landowners to challenge. I guess that will come out as part of that national direction package in the new year around February, March. And we'll be able to understand exactly what that process looks like. There is an existing process where regional council is required to do that land classification process, but with the uncertainty around where things are coming out with national direction next year and whether the land classes are going to change and some of those requirements. The sector's been requesting a bit of an increase in time frame to get that work done, because there's uncertainty coming around jumping in and doing that piece of work now. It's going to change in another few months.
Okay, so we need to prepare ourselves probably to have more activity in the space.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor Guyton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to the Treaties Principle Bill, are we to discuss that now, or is this something that we're going to look at in the workshop later? Because it was talked about yesterday and deferred from that meeting to this meeting. And I'm just wondering if Stuart and Anne are both going to be here for whenever that is discussed, because that would be
later on today.
Yeah, I thought it was later on.
It's fine if you would want to.
Yeah.
Then I will be.
If you had a kind of overarching statement, you could make it now.
Look, yeah, just on that subject, the regional sector group is putting forward a submission, and if we wanted to support them in joining that, she would give us a draft. Now, I think that could be a good way forward. So that whole sector, putting something together at the moment, it's in draft form, but obviously 5 or 6. And it may well be more powerful actually to have a region support. So that's just something to put on the calendar.
Thank you.
Just to clarify through you, Chair, the timing is that we will move into the workshop following the conclusion of strategy and policy. And there's a number of topics on the list for today, so to wrap up topics for the year, but we're doing the training principles bill first. In that.
Just a point of clarification, it's just a workshop, so is there something that we could do formally as a result of that, or is a workshop recommendation normally have to go back to a committee meeting? So I want to make sure that we are able to make a decision, to, like I suggested yesterday, to oppose this bill, or go, if the regional sector group is going to do that, then that's fine, but I want to make sure that we do something definite in this area.
We have in the past endorsed in retrospect submissions, so that we might have to go back.
Well, the other way around it would be to ask Wilma to come in before the end of that meeting and perhaps present us with the draft if we want to make sure it's done within the meeting. But we'll have a break. We can design it, I guess, comes the best way.
Yeah.
We'll get that right in principle.
I don't think any of us want to see it slip out of reach, so we're all committed to making something happen today.
So, Chair, could maybe we do an in principle that we are going to forward a submission based on the outcomes of the workshop later on today.
Yep.
That would.
Somebody got some words for that? Or do we need a recommendation to that?
So the approach that we've used previously is to get guidance from your workshops, and if there isn't a council meeting in the intervening period, to then bring it up for retrospective approval. We lodge them noting that.
Yeah, I think what Stuart's saying is that we could have an in principle agreement here that
there will be submission.
That there will be a submission.
Yeah.
Have it after
whichever way you want.
Yeah.
After a free and frank discussion in the workshop.
Yeah.
So.
It sounds pretty good, Madam Chair.
So I'm happy to move that as an extra recommendation.
You got that, Michaela? Or do you need some?
Do you want to read it out?
It could be something along direct staff or previous submission being prepared based on the wording, based on the content of the workshop today.
Could include supporting.
Yeah. Yes, which could include the what is it? I don't see it often. Submission.
Madam Chair, just to establish it's within our scope to make a submission.
Yes.
Or yes, it is. Yep.
Yes.
So we know that.
Yeah. We can do both. We can either support the group one and or provide our own.
Does that need to be moved as a formal motion?
Yes, well, I'm adding it as a recommendation, so when we approve the recommendations, that will be. So I just need a seconder to add that to the recommendations. Thanks, Councillor McDonald. All those in favour, please say aye. So that's just adding it to the recommendations, then we will cover off the recommendations. Thank you. Excellent point. Chairman Horrell, you're next, actually.
You're just responding to the NES on plantation forestry that was announced the other day. Well, it seems quite restrictive, sort of going to class 6, the ability to plant up to 25% of the I think, they'll have the choice of where they put that, but we're still waiting details. But class 6 to me sounds actually too draconian, but when you put the 25%, the property right to 25%, that probably changes that significantly, but we're still waiting for detail, I guess.
Anybody else? I've got something also.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Page 113 talks about amendments to section 107, which we've talked about a bit before as relates to our Rule 24 and our audit plans. There's a there's a sentence there at the end of that little paragraph. It says, furthermore, the removal of the requirement for an evaluation report reduces the level of transparency in national policy making. Can you explain that a bit more? I don't understand.
Through you, Madam Chair. So there are several measures for ensuring transparency within policy making. And regional plans are, when producing regional plans, we are required to use Section 32 evaluation reports that contain an analysis of different options and the reasons for choosing a pathway.
Yeah.
And for the national direction, there was a similar requirement, but Resource Management Amendment Bill number 1 removed that requirement. It doesn't mean that there are no mechanisms available for promoting transparency. The government is required to produce regulatory impact statements, which have been quite useful for us to analyze implications of a particular bill. But it indicates there was some concerns expressed by various players that this removal as part of the bill, part of the legislation was not conducive to promoting transparency.
Right, it's intended to speed things up, I suppose, is it?
Yes.
I just have a question about the regulatory standards bill on page 136. Mostly because I don't know much about it and it sounds scary, but maybe it isn't. Can you just give me a better understanding of the implications of that?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair, we're looking to have a conversation about that this afternoon as well at the workshop, but in brief, effectively this bill, it's not a bill at this stage, it's sort of pre-work, so there's consultation out at the moment, which closes on the 14th of January, 13th of January.
Great timing.
To put a submission in on the future steps, so it's not actually coming a bill yet, it will come in the new year, but it's the framing up. So effectively what they're looking to do is establish a framework around legislative drafting moving forward. So currently there isn't a process or a template you work through when doing legislative drafting. So they're looking to establish a set of principles to kick off as you go through the process. So that's come through the system. And one of the things we've identified is that there isn't actually any reference to Treaty Waitangi in that process or any consideration, which leaves a bit of a gap around exactly how you work through that process and understand how you put that constitutional document into law and reconcile that process. And then, so, yeah, but
Sneaking its way through. Quite.
yeah, so there's it's still in early days yet, but we're certainly looking to put a submission into and looking to try and get a bit of a position from council this afternoon on that.
Great.
as we move through.
Do you want to have that discussion this afternoon, or shall I take some questions now?
Happy to take questions on the mechanics around the statements in the report.
Right.
And we'll work through the nuances. If there's a position developed this afternoon, we can incorporate that into a submission.
Okay, so I've got Chairman Horrell and Councillor Fail on the technicalities, please.
And I'm assuming a lot of this is, we've heard of examples of the building industry and up to 14 checks by local councils. So I think a lot of it is about getting consistent standards and putting more, in that case they were talking about registered builders having to have insurance, and they were responsible for the builds. So a lot of the stuff is about actually moving things forward quicker. Am I correct in that, or this will be more wide ranging, but that was probably one of the examples that the Prime Minister gave the other day.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Effectively, it's trying to make the legislation go through a better process, be better drafting, and they're looking to develop some principles around how that might look moving forward and get some clarity around. One of the things that's quite good is the regulatory impact statements. So as the government's going through a process, then they would need to go through a regulatory impact statement saying if we've got this legislation in, then what are the impacts across multiple components of the system, and then work that up so it actually has a
better informed lawmaking process rather than going, here's an issue, here's a solution, let's ram it through. So there are potentially some benefits of having a framework, but I guess our view is that it could be a bit more broad and cover a few different aspects around what that process looks like for that regulatory drafting.
Thanks. Councillor McFarlane, did you still have something?
I was just in regards to the recommendation. Can I listen to that recommendation? What?
So I've got,
that other one we were just put through there.
Yeah. so I've
Don't
got,
understand.
correct me if my name's fixed, but I've got. I was going to come back to that, but yeah, let's do it now, sorry.
Is that right?
Yeah, do it now.
Agree in principle to staff drafting a submission opposing the treaty principles bill based on the content that would be discussed at the workshop following the meeting, which could include support for the Te Ura Kahika submission.
So we're having a workshop.
Yes.
That's what I was just making sure that you're not making decisions here.
But in principle, endorsing something.
Just wanting a workshop to work
Yeah,
out what,
yeah,
work
that's right.
what we're putting into it.
That's right.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. Thanks for that, Marcus. Finally, I think, Councillor Rodway.
Finally, okay, thank you. Page 122 and 121, right at the bottom of 121, talks about the 45 agricultural consents that are being rolled over. The automatic extension, and it says is likely to prevent effective management of the adverse effects of such activities. I'd imagine their existing conditions will still be there, but there's no opportunity to put in new conditions if there's been a problem. Is that right? And is so how much of a problem is that? Or is it?
Through you, Madam Chair, effectively the consents are rolled over as opposed to being renewed. So effectively there's no ability to decline or reduce in scale. There is opportunities to review conditions at rollover period. So there's an opportunity to see what is working, if there's anything that needs identified through that process. That process can be triggered by the consents department.
Right. So if there are sort of significant problems, then we could still address those.
Correct.
Oh, that's good. Right, thank you.
Yeah, fair to say that some of the conditions of the existing consents are, 20 years old. So probably not relevant anymore. All right, Chairman Horrell and then Councillor Gibson, and then we'll call it quits. Thank you.
And while we can recall the consent, our ratepayers pay for it, so that's something I'm not happy about. We have talked, I think, maybe coming up with a voluntary accord. I mean, most of these people will want to do the right thing, and they don't want to go into a long-term consent and then get it overturned by change of government. So there's the logic is they don't want them to have to go through a costly exercise, but environmental safeguards actually would give them more security than not. So I think there's an opportunity there rather than having to go through the regulatory. Yes, we can call them the consent, but we pay. And not that keen on that one.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson.
Marcus, through you, Madam Chair, Marcus, can you clarify for me, and because my consent, and it might be only because I'm me, that you can cancel it at any stage if I'm a naughty boy. I've read that in my consent. So what I'm sort of thinking is that even if it is a rollover and somebody does something completely toward against what's going on, the council can just take it away.
Do you want to answer that, Marcus, or will we let Rachel answer that one?
Through you, I was just thinking we probably would need to see the condition that you're pointing at.
Yeah, but that's in our consent. So, my question then becomes the rolling over of them. Okay, that's fine. But if somebody is breaking those conditions, the council has the opportunity to take away it anyway. Take the consent away.
I've got Councillor Crocker, Councillor Pemberton. This is getting it up here.
All consents can contain a review clause. It's not a matter of we just come in and take the consent away.
But you can,
if there is a breach of the consent, then the council may review the consent or parts of it. Just that's in every consent that I've seen. It's not a matter of all grab your consent off it. And those marine ones will all have that as part of their conditions.
Councillor Pemberton, did you have something to
Just a
add?
comment, yes, to comment on Alistair's Councillor Gibson's comment. I think when you read through this, how when you look at the farm plans, you look at the extension, we're going to be moving from an education and working with people to having to really get hard on compliance, because that's our only lever to manage a lot of this stuff, and that is the reality of where Southland's going to see ES, which is a shame. We spent so much time trying to work with the community, and we're going to be put in a position where we have to run a pretty hard and fast roll on compliance. And yeah, it's not putting us in a wonderful position, but that's where we're landing. So that's the reality of it.
Quite important. Not to do with
I'm aware that this is becoming a slightly broader conversation and not just about the marine. So I'd quite like to stop the conversation there, because the topic we're discussing is actually the rollover of those marine consents. I appreciate that everybody's, that's a big important topic, but it might come up later. So Councillor McPhail, is this about the?
It's about on this report, transport.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Major funding, lack of funding from the government, and we are involved in it. And I know there's not much at all, so we get signed off, but it is a major issue in Southland. And I just want to make sure that it's getting the emphasis. I know Russell's involved and Dean, but often we don't talk about it around this table. But we really need to push, do whatever we need to engage with the government, encourage. We actually ask for plenty of money, but they don't give it to us. And they say, oh, we've increased everything, but that's only inflationary. It's not improving things. And so it's just something that I just said, we need a heads up that it's really, we get the, draw the short straw down here, because it's not political, but it's hugely important for our infrastructure and economy. And I know
it's part of the climate change conversation.
I know it's everything. It's just, it's so important. So often, and we get a bit of pressure. We should be really doing a lot more for it, and from ES too, because we're the regional involved in that transport committee for the Southland. So I'm just putting it there. So we talk about a lot of other things, but actually the transport is a major issue.
Through you, Madam Chair, generally the policy monitor document is trying to stick to the tight confines of what's changing through the legislative processes. That has implications of telling us what to do or how to do things or what we can't do anymore. There is a small update in the group update as one of the subsequent papers coming up in the agenda that has a little bit on transport. So we could talk a little bit of that.
Nice.
I think I've gone through to the next agenda.
Right, so that brings that conversation to a close, I think. Just reminding you that we have the recommendation, which is to accept the report, but also we have the extra one, which Michaela is going to share with us again, so that we are clear.
Agree in principle to staff drafting a submission opposing the Treaty Principles Bill based on the content to be discussed at the workshop following the meeting, which could also include support for the Te Ura Kahika submission. Are we clear with that extra recommendation?
To move the amended recommendation.
Thank you. So it's both of those. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor McDonald. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye against. Carried. Thank you. And I would like you to slip back in time to item number 4. Pleasure to welcome the, I have to get the name right because it's quite long, Waiau Fisheries and Wildlife Enhancement Trust. Oh, Habitat Trust is missing from the list. Thank you, welcome. Thank you very much for your very detailed, very interesting report. Look forward to hearing your 10 minutes or so-ish. But if you want to answer some questions, less than 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Claire Jordan Aho, and this is Roger Hodson. We are here, we contract to the Waiau Fisheries and Wildlife Habitat Enhancement Trust. I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you and working with some of you previously, so hello. And you hopefully recall meeting Roger and visiting one of the Habitat Trust flagship projects at the Waio Mouth recently. So that's one of our key project sites. A little bit of background about the Habitat Trust for those of you who perhaps are not as familiar with our work. The Habitat Trust was set up in 1996. It was a community negotiated outcome of the Manapōuri Power Scheme resource consent process. So the Fish and Game and DOC primarily negotiated for a fund of money to be put into a trust for habitat restoration as a negotiation for the Manapōuri Power Scheme taking additional water out of the Waio River. So the science of the day suggested that a minimum flow down the Waio of 30 cumecs was appropriate, and it was negotiated down to between 12 and 16 cumecs, depending on the time of year, in exchange for this fund of money to be put into habitat restoration and the catchment. So that fund has been successfully managed by the Trust for the last 27 years and has been used to fund the Trust's habitat restoration work and the catchment. So we work really closely with farmers. A lot of the work that we do through our habitat enhancement agreement stream of work is working with farmers on their land to undertake riparian restoration and protection and wetland creation and also restoration and enhancement as well. So that's a really key part of our work, and we're really grateful for the ongoing support and buy-in of the farmers and the landowners in the Waio catchment, because without them we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the work that we do. Public access is another big part of what the Habitat Trust does. The Trust has 13 public access points throughout the catchment, and then we have our flagship projects, which are the likes of the Inanga project at the Waio Mouth that you visited, and you may be familiar with the Rakatū wetlands as well. There's another key one. The Habitat Trust is also really grateful for the ongoing support of Environment Southland, particularly in this past financial year. The Habitat Trust has gratefully received a significant Environmental Enhancement Fund grant from Environment Southland, and we really appreciate that support. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
Kia ora koutou, ko Roger Hodson, taku ingoa. Just picking up on a couple of details, I guess, in terms of what the Trust has achieved over the sort of 27-year and counting lifespan, which sort of includes, these major habitat restoration projects, 5 of those, as Claire mentioned, the public access, and then this partnership with private landowners to implement a habitat enhancement agreement, which is essentially an interest-free loan that's granted as a contribution towards the capital cost of works undertaken. It can include a range of things, including stock exclusion fencing, fish passage considerations, constructed wetland development, and other stream restoration, habitat restoration measures that might be appropriate given the species that are present and the position of the waterway and the riverscape. So to date, that kind of comes to about 250 agreements that are in place and covers just under 3,500 hectares. And in the year that the report that you've received and the report you've received covers, that's including an additional 4.4 kilometres of fencing around streams, riparian margins and wetlands, totaling about 28 hectares of land incorporated within those, and 2.7 hectares of constructed wetlands. So that's new habitats that have been constructed within those areas. So like Claire said, we're really grateful to the ongoing support of a number of landowners within the catchment who've enable that work to continue, and the trust is also kind of looking to expand on some of its major projects in particular partnership with the Department of Conservation and opportunities that present in the river corridor on stewardship land. So I think we're probably happy to take any questions or discussion that you might have, or invite you to visit other sort of locations in the future as well.
Absolutely, and we're more than happy to give you a tour if you do have the opportunity to come out west again in the near future. And I think the other thing, the other open offer that we'd like to make is that we are fortunate in the trust. We've got a lot of experience and expertise around riparian management, gravel management, and wetland creation and enhancement. And so we are keen and happy to contribute to those work streams within council where there are opportunities to do so.
Right, thank you. Any questions, team? Fair to say we're mostly pretty familiar with you there. Ask some questions. Thanks, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. You're well organised and you know what you're doing. It's quite impressive for some time. It doesn't happen overnight. I just want to know, do you have any other funding arrangements with any other community groups or individuals? You don't have to tell who they are, but do you have the facility there to other people come in and support you?
So the way that the habitat enhancement agreements work is that the Habitat Trust provides a portion of the funding, and the rest of the funding comes from the landowner themselves. So in that way, we have that's the key mechanism that we use there. There's also we also do some work with QE2 in those spaces, so people can access a higher level of contribution if the habitat restoration work also meets the QE2 covenant requirements, and so there's that sort of co-funding arrangement that we have. And in terms of other outside funding, if is that kind of where you want it? So, and that's really just on an ad hoc basis with us applying for funding as and when those opportunities arise.
As well as, I guess, periodic donations. So you might have noticed that at Home Creek, the trust built a walking bridge to kind of change the alignment of the track, which is, I think, a great improvement to the functionality of that asset, and we're really grateful for donations from the Motor Caravan Association, who are immediately adjacent and probably one of the larger user groups, as well as the neighbouring farmer who's, I guess, benefited by the track's alignment no longer utilising a bridge and lane that he also utilises. So there's periodic donations, maybe on a project-specific basis, or certainly the EEF that Claire mentioned earlier has been a really valuable source of funding for 5 of our major projects in the current year. And there's other, I guess, opportunities that we look into and apply for on a sort of as need basis.
Just a quick supplementary, please. So the Environmental Enhancement Fund, you've used it on projects. How do you find that quite in relation to actually getting the physical work done? Some of these projects usually take more than a year. They're 2 or 3 year projects. I mentioned you'd have some of those. How does that fund line up against those timeframes? Is there any suggestions in there about any modifications around the funds? Or could be deployed in any different ways?
I could certainly speak to that. So we're certainly grateful to receive that funding, and it makes the money that we put in go twice as far, essentially. There are some challenges in terms of the phasing. So just to expand on that a wee bit, this year we had funding confirmed late July, late to engage contractors and supply particularly plants for that planting season, but the work needs to be delivered by the end of May. So there is a real challenge for us in terms of doing that. And I guess that sort of annual uncertainty adds to that challenge. So where possible, I think, having sort of forward-looking 18 months plus timeframe would be a valuable consideration to give kind of the timing between grant approval, contracting and procurement through implementation. And, with planting particularly, it's important to do it at the right time of year in different regions to have the best outcomes. It can make a huge difference. So that's probably the biggest challenge I would see. And then I guess building on that, phasing is just also having that continuity. So knowing in advance, beyond that there is a fund that's going to continue to be available and or indications of support. So perhaps some thinking around the timing of that approval being made to coincide with the phasing of the work would be valuable.
Thanks.
Really good feedback.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Maybe possible. Who knows? Worth looking at. Chairman Horrell and then Councillor Gibson. Thank you.
Yes, no, thanks for the comprehensive report, and it's, well, it's habitat and habitat enhancement. Your expertise in wetlands obviously has the dual effect of probably taking out sediment and nutrients. So it's I talked to Roger when we were on the site there, and some stage when I get time, I'll follow you up on a potential project, because each one of these give us more biodiversity and habitat, but they also have water quality pluses as well. So yeah, great work you guys are doing.
Thanks, Jim. Councillor Gibson.
Through you, Madam Chair, got that right. You have an impressive history or track record of coming in under budget with your projects. How do you achieve that? Do you inflate at the beginning?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think we're just prudent in terms of delivery.
And I guess you're using volunteer labour and your head cost a bit, because I'm just looking at one here, the expended habitat enhancement thing, 192, and you come in at 104.
Mm-hmm.
That's significant.
And sometimes too, though, that's if work wasn't able to happen in a particular financial year, sometimes the projects, for whatever reason, can't be completed before the 31st of March, and so they might get moved into the next financial year as well.
So I think you're looking at the habitat enhancement program
Yes,
specifically.
there
So
were
that's
several.
that partnership with private landowners. So that one particularly is really quite flexible in terms of the timing of delivery. We're really conscious of the economic climate and the rural sector, and so we need to be able to be responsive to incoming inquiries and to meet sort of opportunities that arise in a given year. So we maintain a sort of 25 to 50k buffer of funding there to be able to meet short-term inquiries where someone's really keen to do something and they're actually keen to do it in 3 months' time, but we haven't previously engaged with them. And then there's also projects in there that include, I guess, a longer term and or changing priorities. So where people will find themselves in a situation where they've completed half of the job this year, the funding might have to get moved into the subsequent years.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thanks very much, team. Nice to see you. Have a Merry Christmas and suitable festive break from your work. So I guess there's no rest from some of the work that you do, but all the best for the new year. And yeah, absolutely, we'd be keen to come and visit. Well, I would be. I'm volunteering everybody. Another project, because it's great work that you're doing. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Excuse me. Right, 10.3 climate change and community resilience portfolio update. And Rachel's going to do that for us.
So through you, Chair, we've got Anka away today and Marcus is currently out of the room, but maybe if there's any questions, I can take those back or we can give you an update at the next meeting. I know there's already been a wee bit of climate discussion today.
Yes, councillor Rodway, did you want to say
Yes,
something?
yes, I can elaborate a little bit on this report, Madam Chair. The recommendations that came out of the last meeting in November were to commit to proceed with the proposed communications engagement program to support a developing the regional framework for action. We recognise that a well-managed public relations program is necessary for an effective climate action response, and we are planning to have a climate hui early 2025 to bring together people, science and solutions to further the regional effort in our climate change response. And the group commits to further developing an ongoing regional climate planning process that accounts for local government elections, and aligns with council LTP cycles in order to secure both a community mandate and funding for future collaborative climate-related actions. So this asks each council to weave the climate response into the LTP process so that sufficient resources are allocated to this area, and each climate action plan would only be finalised after each council's LTP was finalised. The first action plan would be finalised in 2026 to inform the 2027 long-term plan. The regional framework for action will flow from this and will be realistic actions that can be achieved within this timeframe. Actions beyond 2027 will be dependent on the success of these. And we're looking to have 5 meetings in 2025. We've discussed many specific actions, but these need to be sequenced due to resourcing limitations, and staff have been asked to consider the feasibility of including these actions in respective annual plan processes. And we've also identified many community groups who could be involved and consulted about the work of the Regional Climate Change Working Group. So Phil's been leading this, and Anka has been, and along with staff from other councils, have been working together hard to bring everything together. It's been quite a slow process, and some members have expressed a bit of frustration about the lack of action, but actually it really is forming a very good foundation for bringing everybody together, and that's so important. We did have a bit of a low number at the last meeting. Unfortunately, there's some people from Gore weren't there, district council and team, but we nevertheless proceeded, and of course we're getting feedback from those people to make sure they're happy with the course of action. So it's a very thorough process.
Yes, definitely, and reinforce your comments about how difficult and the slow approach is necessary to get all of that.
Yes, as Bill says, if you want to travel far, you have to take everybody together.
That's right, and you all have to be paddling at the same time. Councillor Guyton.
Which isn't necessarily true. I'm just wondering if I could ask Councillor Rodway, looking at the way central government is affecting our plans with regards land use and farming through their not exactly lined up way of viewing the world. Is your group, Morris, mindful of the ineptitude being shown by central government at the moment with regard to long-term climate mitigations and actions?
Well, I think the group's actions are largely independent of that. We've got, we're working with Great South, who've done a lot of good work in the past, and the South, industries have been converted from fossil fuels to biomass, for example, and so they've achieved a lot, and so we're working with them, and I really think it's independent of what's happening at that level. I think there's a very strong, there's not completely unanimous views amongst all the council about things that we have to do, but the large majority of all the councillors in Southland, evidenced by all the councils passing, agreeing with the strategy, show that we can proceed. This council, for example, has done, as I mentioned earlier, has done the greenhouse gas emissions profile of the council. We've done it twice here, and other councils have done it as well. I don't think Gore have done these yet, but all the other councils have. And we're looking at ways of reducing our emissions, and that's just on that side of it. And then on the other side, the climate mitigation work, that's a big part of our operation. We are making sure that people are not affected by flooding, for example. So, no, I don't know what the government's doing is affecting.
Thank you. That's very good to hear.
Thanks. Any other questions?
I'll just happy to hear Morris talking about bringing in the wider community, but I sort of cautioned I was the Conservation Board meeting recently, and we brought up the subject, and no one at the Department of Conservation knew anything about this program at all, and I thought, what's going on here? I would have thought they would have been part of the collective. So yeah, I guess I'll just express my concern that we actually bring in the whole community somehow to be participants and to share in the understanding of whatever's being developed within. So
yeah, definitely.
Well, that is a very good point, actually, and it hasn't been discussed as having DOC as a partner or as part of the group, and not to my recollection anyway. So we'll take that back and see if we can rectify that.
They expressed, well, I picked up, they expressed a real interest in being involved.
I think in my view, this particular group was, to get the governance people all on the same page, so that there's a really good solid understanding and agreement and foundation, and to then include some wider groups. I mean, that was my understanding. I could be wrong. But that kind of explains, that entry level, let's get our own ducks in a row before we bring in other people's ducks.
Yeah.
But
it's definitely a local government and TAMI group initially, and Great South has sort of been brought in a little bit later. So there are, but no, we can bring that up.
And sorry, I'm coming to you, Councillor. Just on the hui, there's a really awesome opportunity to have some people who are under 25 years of age involved in a targeted part of that, I would hope, because they're the ones, right? Councillor McDonald, did you?
I just saw the connection there about the hui and what you were saying. Maybe that's the chance to bring people in. You should have that governance set in your strategy, have some real material things to talk about being demonstrated there. So when do you think, Morris, was that suggested in earlier in the Q1?
Yeah, March, maybe April.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Somebody like to move that recommendation that we receive that report? Thank you, Councillor Cook. Seconded Councillor Rodway. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Cool. 10.4 is the group update. Thank you, Rachel.
So this item has been prepared by a variety of people across the group. So just giving you some information on matters of interest, both the nationally important matters have probably already been covered, but some regional matters in the report as well. And then there's some key projects and programs are at. So we're really happy to take questions on that.
Thanks, team. Any questions? We'll just let them catch up. Must be an awesome report, there's no question. It's fair to say that we're all well aware that there's heaps on.
This was where the transport planning update was provided.
So,
to discuss that a little.
Yeah,
do you want to
it
come?
wasn't the other one, but it was just, I do see that there too, so.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll just make my.
nothing further, no?
No. Need to keep pushing.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more, sorry, can I just make a comment?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So we shouldn't be waiting for the government. We need to be we are telling the government that we need to really keep on enforcing that they're letting us down. And there's even a wee comment that they said, oh, we don't think you can use the money that we give you. You haven't got the ability to use it. So this comes from NZTA. It's like, you're asking for all this money, but we don't think you have the ability to use it. And I'm going, from us. You know, so this is the sort of discussion. They just wanted to cut back. So, but anyway, that's I just want to keep it. Just mention that there is transport we've got to deal with.
Yes. And the local water done well,
Still,
landed some new stuff, right? Just curious.
Yes.
Anything you want to add to that?
In the last couple of days, there's
Yeah.
been changes to the water services bill, but I'm not quite sure what the timeframes for this place. Shannon may, no, Shannon, have you got the timeline for the water services changes that have come through, or is that?
Just come back to me when. Councillor Chairman Horrell, sorry.
Yes, it's in regards to the efficiency and effectiveness review of the RPS. Are we still continuing with that? Obviously, we can't enact it at the moment, but is the work still going on? Is there changes that need to be made?
So, with commission, we've got a draft, RPS efficiency and effectiveness report, that we're working through and, hope to have complete early next year. And that will guide any, future planning, in terms of what needs to be responded to in a plan change or a, broader review of the RPS itself. So, and work is still progressing in terms of working out what scope of work we may need to do. And it's a statutory requirement that we undertake that efficiency and effectiveness review as well, regardless of the timing of any subsequent update to the RPS.
Councillor Cook.
Query about how we're getting on with the regional coastal plan that we've been talking about. So, are we still developing the substance of that?
Yeah, we are still working on the regional coastal plan review. Some parts are further along in terms of starting to do some drafting and assessments of provisions. Some parts still require quite a bit of community engagement and stakeholder engagement to get to notifications. It is still a piece of work. We are aware that the government has indicated that changes to the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. So hopefully early next year, by March, we can get an idea of what that could look like. So to see whether we need to refresh and look at the approach that we are proposing to take in that space. So we're aware that there's potential that we might need to shift some bits, but we're still progressing.
The consultation part of that's going to be interesting because there's a consultation on a number of things required in the new year. So working out how best to do all of that's going to be somebody's job.
At the same time, the government will be consulting on 21 pieces of
Yes.
national direction.
Yes, we might be over-consulted at some point. The danger, of course. All right, thank you. Somebody would like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Cook. Seconded, Councillor McPhail. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, team. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. And 10.5 is the response from Minister Simmons to our letter supporting the PCE's recommendations. Sent as requested, and there's the response. I'm not sure. Has anybody got any? Want to say something, Rachel?
Perhaps just to note that there is another report pending from the PCE in the space which may have some further recommendations relevant to regional councils as well. So,
great. Councillor Pimpleton.
Yeah, just drawn to the fact that a lot being weighted on overseer. Is that something we're comfortable with as a council? Is that precluding other robust programs coming along? Is it pigeonholing things for us going forward? The weight of that.
Slightly different topic, I think, because this was our response to the. Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry, apologies. But it was also that central repository was the point.
Yeah,
But
I'm just raising a flag. That's all.
Yeah.
But I think our plan allows the CEO to approve other models, and so I think we've got that.
Councillor Rodway.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Thank you. Somebody like to move that recommendation then, please?
Happy to move that, and Rachel just mentioned the PCA's latest work on models, etc., and that's something we probably need to look at in the new year, and there's a strong case for the number of models out there, the need to perhaps consolidate and perhaps pick several that people use rather than, because there's a broader number out there and they're not always shared. And there's a lot of valuable data in those modelling, and it makes good points about that in science, and which I've complained about for years, that a lot of science is siloed, and surely the public will be improved. So happy to move.
Thank you, Chairman. Seconded by Councillor McFarlane, I think. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And 10.6 is the update on councillor requests and actions. Do you want to speak to that, Rachel?
Thanks. Just to highlight, there are a couple of things that will come into the program for next year. So the follow-up item to the forestry report you had today will be part of the series next year. We obviously have some coastal matters to come back to you, and that will form part of our ongoing discussions on the coastal plan and the treaty principles workshop to follow. The letter to the Minister of Resources, I just wanted to note, so you asked staff to write a letter, and we have got a draft prepared. However, it is somewhat out of it, different to our usual practice, in that we generally only provide input into the processes where we're providing constructive feedback, suggesting changes and amendments. So we just wanted to clarify that you still would like us to send that letter, which was a complaint about the time frame.
Yeah, and I might just speak to that briefly, because I think it was my suggestion initially. And I'm happy to admit that perhaps it is not the best approach actually, and I think we probably need to go back and look at exactly what it was about the minerals bill that we would like to have discussed with over a better time frame. But if you still want to send that letter, we can do it that way. Otherwise, I'd be happy to withdraw that request for the letter to go, because complaining to him is probably unhelpful at this point about something that's not part of the bill itself. So I'm happy to take your advice on that, Councillor.
Well, I'd agree, Madam Chair, if the staff have reservations about this, and you do too, I would be happy to follow that course of action.
Thank you. Any other disagreement with that? Great, thank you. Apologies for setting things in motion that perhaps I shouldn't, but this is what we do. So somebody would like to move the recommendation to receive the report and withdraw that letter.
Happy to move.
Thank you. Councillor Rodway, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And just that, I think that brings us to the end. But I would like to say two things. Firstly, I should have in my chair's report congratulated the Treat Yourself boys that we met from Aparima, because they won the National Young Enterprise Scheme Award with their work. So yay, we saw them first. And congratulations to those young gentlemen. They've obviously done some fine work. I hope that continues while they head off to university. And secondly, just to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a restful and not worried about council anything summer break, lots of sunshine, and we'll see you all in the new year. And I'll just close with a very poorly pronounced here. Kia whakarea te tapu, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia wātia ai te ara, pamie huie tai. Thank you very much, everybody. Madam Chair,
Yesterday there was a request for Ali Kerr to come and have a little intro and she got caught up with